I'm Jake, and this is an exclusive interview with Alexander Knight for Seven. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. How are you feeling 2 months out from the release? I know this album was an extraordinarily long time coming. How are you feeling? It's out. It's firmly been out of your hands for a while now.
Still kind of surreal to me, honestly. It's cool though. It's cool. I'm really glad that it's out. Um, yeah, I've just been enjoying the feedback that it's been getting. Been enjoying listening to it, enjoying playing it around people and parties and shows and all that. Yeah, man, it's been good. It's been good.
What's been the most surprising part of the reception to the album? You know, you sit on a record like this for so long and you meditate on these songs for so long. When you give them to people, there's a lot of, not sure how they're going to take it. What's been the most surprising part about the reception?
I think, well, one, I'd say like the song specifically that people like the most has been a huge shock to me. Like a lot of people really like Queen of Hearts,
Yeah.
which has definitely been a huge surprise. And Too Many Goodbyes. And I think also just like people's understanding of the concept of it and still unpacking it, I think has also been a really cool reception. Like I was expecting for people to kind of be like taken aback by such a strong concept,
Yeah.
but I don't think I was prepared for how well they were taking it, you know what I mean? And how invested they were into the concept of the idea. Which is cool.
You know, it's not often that a modern artist goes for a concept album for their first large piece of work. It's quite the undertaking. What was the inspiration for going for a concept album as your first album?
Well, it's interesting because the whole idea of Alexander Knight is pretty conceptual as is, and so the first three EPs, right, Forsaken, The Lost Night, and Nightfall, are all concept EPs. So they're all telling one storyline that intertwines and leads up to The Last Night.
Right.
So it's like all the music has kind of always been conceptual. I kind of think about it like the EPs serve as episodes in a TV show or something of that sort. And the Lost Night or The Last Night, the album is kind of a movie in a sense, you know, like kind of how like sometimes in those animated cartoons or like anime, they'll have like episodes and seasons and like, you know, they'll do these really long spans of like this is part of one TV show. Yeah, kind of, you know, we'll have the TV show on the side and that'll be the EP and then we'll have the movie, you know.
I like this imagery of like TV show into movie. When putting the album together and thinking about it as a movie, you know, the track list feels very deliberate. How long did it take to get the track list in an order that made sense to you? And what was that process like specifically?
You know, it's funny you asked that because that was also one of the things I think I was surprised by in terms of like people's reception to it. Is a lot of people were asking me how did I go about doing the track list, and I actually kind of approached it in like reverse order. I started with all of the beats. So a lot of the beats that I made are beats I had been working on for like the past year or so, maybe even 2 years, maybe even longer than that. And I kind of organized it based off of the beats.
Right.
So it was more focused on like the sonics of it and the sonic progression of it. And then I kind of wrote the songs around that. So I knew exactly the track order and the storyline and how the story was going to be told before I even started recording.
So the opening of the album, Night's Lemma, like much of the album feels like a very internally conversational piece of music, and it starts very atmospheric before the actual beat kicks in about halfway through the song. That introspection is like a theme that runs the album heavily. How much of the album is about the character, and how much of it is about you, Alexander Knight, outside of the music?
The album is all entirely about the character for sure, but the whole thing about this character and like at least that you get from the first three EPs, which kind of serves as like the precursor to the album, is that the thing about this character is that this is a character who's kind of been like traveling in between like space and time and kind of has a skewed perception of reality.
Right.
And so there's constantly like songs or moments in the album that are going back and forth in between like the reality of Alexander Knight, like in this world,
Right.
and trying to slay this king like as he's doing on this album and traveling, you know, across this land to get to the kingdom. And then there's also, moments of deep reflection that are reflected in, dreams and
Right.
nightmares and things that kind of exist in, my own personal life as well. Because all of those things are kind of aspects of Alexander Knight's being that he's just trying to understand and grapple. But, he has visions of these other lives in which, he's kind of stuck in our current reality, and he's reflecting on those things and, kind of conceptualizing what it means to be a black man in America. But at the same time, it's, he's still, at the end of the day, just a knight who's on a mission, but he's having all these visions and all these dreams and these different experiences coming from all different parts of his mind and his experiences and his past as he's, done traveled through space and time throughout all this time. And, now all of it's like coming out in all these different manifestations
Right.
on these songs. So a lot of it's just really dealing with like the internal struggle of that, like the mental struggle, um, as he's not only fighting, you know, physically against all these creatures and monsters and demons to get to the king, but he's also fighting, himself and his own personal demons, and has to reflect on all that he's lost and all that he's gained and, the grief that exists within all of that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. Throughout the album, the production is very varied, but one of the things that stuck out to me especially was the vocal production was very varied. The Citizen is Dying Inside and Knight's Dilemma have sections where the vocals are thoroughly being processed, either pitched up, pitched down, filtered extremely. What was the purpose of those mixing decisions specifically? Was it to give a separate perspective, to implore kind of the listener to come from a different angle? And what was your thought process behind that?
Yeah. So in terms of the vocal production, especially with like a lot of the pitching up and pitching down and the pitch shifting overall as a whole, a lot of it's really meant to embody a different character, and that's mostly Knights Gone Wicked. So the Knights Gone Wicked is, consistent of these two characters, Citizen and Criminal, and they both kind of have their own stories, but they're wicked knights who serve the king. And Citizen is a character who serves the king, but is really lost in the meaning behind it and very like untrusting of the king, but feels like he has no choice but to serve this king because that's all he's known his whole time. Whereas Criminal is somebody who's much more invested and not really as compromised, by their own internal feelings, and really serves as like the king's first in command. So the voices are really meant to reflect that in terms of pitch shifting. A lot of other characteristics in terms of the vocal production on certain songs is a lot of like atmospheric decisions in terms of just bringing in the listener as well and kind of just granting moments within like the music itself. But a lot of it's really intentional to evoke a feeling in the listener and to get a sense that, in some cases, some things are coming from different characters, but, that the music is very intentionally aligned with the lyricism and aligned with the production and aligned with the characters and aligned with the story. So that's kind of where all those decisions came into place. Like everything was very intentional in that part.
Right. So talking about the production, Queen of Hearts is a straight boom bap track, and this side opens with was ostensibly a punk rhythm and then goes into what I would call almost like an indie soft rock vibe. Um, Across all the genres in the record, what was the inspiration to implement such a wide, variety of sound throughout? Was it it's like the vocal production to serve the story, or was it kind of to show your like kind of skill set as a producer and artist?
It was more for the story. I think, we're talking about a knight who's experiencing so much internal turmoil.
Yeah.
And I think for human beings as a whole, that comes out in very many different ways. And I kind of just wanted to showcase that in as many ways possible throughout the record. So I felt like the best way to achieve that was through different genres. You kind of get a sense of just how complex a character is. If you have 15 songs and every single one of them is a different genre, you can get a sense of like, oh, this person is really trying to understand themselves and trying to understand where they're going and where they're coming from and who they are. So I feel like songs like this side are intentionally aggressive at the beginning because it's invoking that feeling of that aggression,
Right.
and kind of this like that song is like he's boisterous, and he wants people to like know like he's Alexander Knight. This is the story. This is the mission. This is the journey.
Yeah.
But then it slows down and he kind of comes to this like moment of softness and just speaking from the heart, about just being lost and being alone and having to deal with these struggles all alone, by himself. So that's kind of where the genre bending, blending, and kind of just overall span of it really comes from, trying to best showcase the emotions and feelings of somebody who's just dealing with such a complex mind,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the song "The Last Night," it takes a moment to reflect on the character from a perspective that is firmly not the character. It, to me, sounds like a third person. What or who is speaking to him in this moment?
Yeah, so in the song The Last Night, that's like kind of like a post-climax moment, Queen of Hearts is like the real climax moment. It's like he's gone through this journey, through all this self-reflection. He understands who he is. He just finished like the song To Slay the King,
Yeah.
which is features light, and light is literally playing like the essence of light. It's kind of a light that's over his shoulder, kind of telling him, you have to slay the king. This is what you're doing it for. This is what you're fighting for. This is what you're working towards. And Queen of Hearts comes in. And he gets the chance to kind of speak to the queen. He arrives at the kingdom and he thinks that he's going to find the king and finally slay him there. But that's not what happens. He finds the queen instead. And he has the chance to kind of plead with the queen and, explain to her what is the reality of the kingdom, what is the reality of what he's experienced throughout time and space in all of these different dimensions and all of these different places, And so that's really where he's like expressing himself and his internal feelings. And the queen says, I understand exactly what you're saying, but I can't help you. I can't do anything about it. It's not up to me because unfortunately the queen is also under the rule of the king as well, this wicked king. So he ends up getting locked up, and that's kind of what we end up hearing in Malice. And Malice is kind of like the moments as he's being like chained up and he's reflecting just about, how malicious, the world is really. And that leads straight into The Last Night. And on The Last Night, we get this perspective of him, kind of realizing that although the world is malicious, that doesn't mean that he should give up and that he shouldn't stop trying and that he shouldn't stop fighting for what he believes in. And that's really what that chorus is. And then the verse comes in, the verse takes place while he's actually like entering the prison cell, the dungeon, and he's being put into a cage. And while he's inside of the cage, he has a vision from an older man who used to be a knight in the past, who used to serve the king. And that older man is explaining to him the story of what happened to the king, how he ended up being corrupted, how he ended up being wicked, and kind of why he has to continue his journey to slay the king today. So a lot of it's just like these different entities and these different energies that are, reinstilling themselves in his mind to help push his story and help keep him motivated, when these times of doubt and loss. Yeah.
The final track on the album, Too Many Goodbyes, is like much of the album, very reflective, but also very melancholic. It's a very gentle outro to, the To Slay the King is this very hype moment, and then we kind of trend downwards, and it calms down towards the end. What was the process when it comes to wrapping this album up? Like, what was your thought process when it comes to this is how it needs to end? This is the last note I want to hit. And going further from that, does the story of The Last Night continue beyond this?
Too Many Goodbyes is probably one of the harder songs to pinpoint, I feel like, when creating the album, because I just wasn't entirely sure how exactly I wanted to end it, but I wanted it to feel like it was to be continued.
Right.
And I think Too Many Goodbyes definitely does that in the verse, where it's kind of like now we're getting a third person perspective, outside of the song The Last Night, but we're getting another third person perspective of like a narrator,
Right.
kind of describing, like this is a dark soul, but it's very beautiful. Somebody who's been through a lot, but is still like finding their way, and there's a lot of, beauty in that. And so the whole point of that song was really just to kind of reassure that this story wasn't coming to an end. It was just this part of the story. It was this struggle, it was this pain, it was this reflection, that this knight has been through that is now made him into the person that he needs to be. And too many goodbyes, the whole point of it is like he has to say goodbye to his older self, but he also has to say goodbye to the things and the people that are around him, um, to become something else, to actually be a knight worthy of slaying this king and saving this kingdom. So that was kind of the whole intention of Too Many Goodbyes. And we even get an angel on that song, um, who is kind of ushering along into the next era and saying, like, don't forget that what you're doing is for a higher power, that before you strike, let your words be for you, let your words be for God, and don't let go of that as you continue on, because as much as you have to say goodbye to what you have and the things that no longer serve you now, you have to understand that it's all with the purpose of serving something greater than yourself.
So I was watching the video for Distant, and I noticed that there was a hashtag on the video that says "serve a higher purpose," and I was curious about what that meant to you, as an individual, and that what that means to the story of the character in the album.
Right. Yeah. So the idea of serving something greater, the hashtag that I try to use on all the videos, is so much more than just a hashtag. It's a meaning. It's a purpose. It's a message. Serving something greater means serving something greater than yourself, understanding that this life isn't just yours, that we as human beings, I believe, to find peace, we have to look outside of ourselves and focus on something bigger than ourselves. So, serving ourselves, but serving our families, our friends, our communities, the universe, the planet, you know. And I think that's a message that I utilize in all of my music and in my essence and in my being as a person, but also that is the Alexander Knight message as a whole. That is the core value of Alexander Knight. Because when we live in an era where there's not, at least in like the real world, we live in an era where there's not a lot of modern day kings and queens. So like as a knight, what does that mean to be a knight? What does that mean to serve something? What are you serving? Well, we're not serving kings and queens anymore. So what can we serve that'll actually benefit the universe and benefit the planet, serve something greater than ourselves. So that's really where I write all of my music from. That's the message I want to spread to the world. That's the message I hope people can take away. I think this album is really meant for anyone who aims to serve something greater than themselves. It's somebody who wants to believe in something greater and wants to find a way to actually find peace on this planet, because I believe that's very possible. And that is the only way that Alexander Knight is able to maintain the mental state of a knight at the end of the day. Otherwise just a man.
Right.
But it's the mental fortitude of something that grand, a message and an idea, a concept that's that powerful, that is, guiding him to become the person that he must be in order to hopefully save, this land from a wicked, corrupted king.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So Heliopolis, for my money, hits the most introspective beat throughout the whole album. Clearly written from a very personal place. Um, what inspired you to write that song? What kind of headspace were you in writing that song?
The song is so interesting. It's really like a one of one on the project, just because the only reason I should use, okay, so Heliopolis is a city in Cairo. It's the city of the sun in Egypt, right? Um, and when I was working on that song, I was making the beat, and originally I was using a sample that was called Heliopolis. Funny enough, that's not even the sample that I use in the song. So there's nothing actually about the production of the song that ties to that at all. But that's where the name was inspired from. And it was one of those things where it was like I made the beat maybe a few days before, and I just woke up one morning and it was like right after hearing about some deaths that had happened in my family, and I kind of just started reflecting on like just a lot of passings that I had experienced in my life. Like growing up, it was like very consistently, at least once or twice a year, I would lose a family member, probably since I was in like middle school or so. So uh, that I kind of woke up and I thought about it and I reflected on how much of that energy is within me, and how much of my life is carrying on those who no longer get the opportunity to be here. And so that's really what like Heliopolis is about, like those first few lines, like it's been a minute since I slept well, trying to set sail on an ocean of a dream at night. Like that was literally me writing that 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. I think I had been up all night.
Mm.
Like I don't, maybe I slept like a little bit, but like I don't think I'd even really slept that night. And I woke up and those just came out, and then like the whole song kind of just came out just like that. And it ends with that whole thing of like, they cry on the east side to the west side. Like that's really like a universal understanding, that everybody deals with grief
Mm.
and everybody processes grief in different ways. But it's always important to remember that the thing about losing people is that they're not lost. They're
Mm.
just no longer on this physical plane, but they still exist as a part of you, and you can use their energy as fuel to keep you going. And a reminder of what it is that you're working towards and why you're living and breathing in the first place, and what a privilege that is.
Mm. Loss and carrying on through loss is a theme that absolutely runs through the entirety of the album. In your mind, how does Heliopolis tie into the rest of the record?
Yeah, so Heliopolis is like one of those songs in the record where, like I was saying, Alexander Knight is a character who's been traveling through space and time, and we've been getting that through the EPs. The first Forsaken EP takes place while he's actually a part of the kingdom, but like it starts immediately with the song Trap off of Forsaken, right? And that's him kind of, he's forsaken for that song essentially. He's forsaken for that message because he's a knight who's serving the king, and he realizes that the way that the king is running the kingdom is a trap, meant to keep people in control and take away their power. And so he exposes that, and he's like, this is a trap, and the king forsakes him for that. And that's kind of where the whole story begins.
Right.
And so from there, he ends up kind of, he's on the run away from the kingdom. He eventually ends up, it gets very deep and introspective, but he eventually ends up traveling through space and time as a means to kind of get back at the king and kind of prevent all of this from happening. And in that experience, he ends up getting lost in time, and that's what happens on the Lost Night,
Mm.
where he's kind of stuck, traveling through different points in time and different dimensions. And then Nightfall, we get this thing where he kind of, unlocks a power within himself, and he reaches like a higher plane.
Mm.
And now he's kind of existing beyond space and time,
Mm.
And so then eventually he gets back to the kingdom, and he's lost, and he doesn't remember exactly why he has to fight the king, why he has to slay the king, where he's come from, what he's been through. But he keeps getting these visions and these flashes of different lives, different perspectives, different things that he knows that he's experienced, but he can't really put his finger on it.
Mm.
So that's kind of like Heliopolis is one of those representations of that in the album, where it's a song that exists in a different dimension, in a different part of himself, deep down within his soul, that may not be his current reality, but still exists within his heart, and it's kind of like a glimpse into this other life, um, and it says, like in the intro, it's like, as the night, awakens, he, reflects on all that he's lost, and all that he has to gain, and that's kind of like where that's like starts to really hit, because having all these feelings and all these emotions of grief and not knowing where they come from or what that really means to you or what those experiences were is something that's very conflicting, And so that's even why like the performance and the delivery of that song is the way that it is. It's very quick, it's very fast, it's very in your face, because that's what life is, fast, quick, in your face, confusing, conflicting, painful, beautiful, and that's really what that song is meant to reflect, And so that song is kind of like one of those songs that kind of it's like almost a departure from the rest of the story, you know, that kind of gives a little bit more explanation into like who this character is and what they're really going through, and you get a sense of like personality and identity. You know, similar thing happens on I Think the Citizen is Dying Inside.
Right, right. To no surprise for you, I'm sure, my favorite production on the whole thing is Rosetta. Talk a little bit about how that song came together. It's absolutely a unique song, even within an album full of unique songs.
Right.
Production-wise, a very off-kilter rhythm. How did that song together, both beat and lyrics?
Yeah, Rosetta is definitely a personal favorite. It's also another one of those songs that's also kind of like a departure, you know, and something that exists in a different reality. But the reason that Rosetta is called Rosetta is because it's a story about a guitar. And, you know, if you look at an acoustic guitar, the little ring around the center of the guitar where the sound is being amplified from is called a Rosetta. So the song is really about kind of one, like the personal connection between like an inanimate object and how that can be objectified and how that can be sexualized lyrically, and also just, you know, the idea of like the ways in which we can sometimes tie ourselves to materialistic things, in this case it being a guitar, but also understanding that something like that is some materialistic things actually grant more, if that makes sense. Like they grant us perception and vision and ways of understanding and seeing the world that we wouldn't be able to have otherwise. And music is one of those things, you know? So the Rosetta, the guitar, is a personification of that experience between, you know, a human being and the universe, you know? So that's really like what that song is lyrically about. And it's like telling a very specific story of really like my life, but a very specific story of like me playing guitar at a show one time, and you know, I'm doing a solo and the strap comes undone, and then I go and I take it home and I'm trying to play it, and I'm like, you know, I have such like this strange love-hate relationship with, you know, music, and something that's so strong and so powerful and so important in my life, you know, but it's also, that's a reflection of, you know, kind of all of us as a whole. You know, we have those same relationships with our family, we have those relationships with our partners, we have those relationships with things that bring us joy. You know, sometimes things that bring us joy can bring us pain, because, you know, love and hate can come from the same place, you know, from the heart. So that's really what Rosetta is about. And the production of that is, you know, it samples the song called Bird Rock Road. And funny enough, actually, MF Doom also used that same sample in a beat tape, and his song is called Bird Rock Root. But yeah, that production is just like, I just wanted it to feel really groovy. I wanted it to feel unnatural. I wanted it to feel like very in your face and just head boppy. And most importantly, I wanted to make a song about a guitar that didn't have any guitar on it. So that's kind of how Rosetta came about. And yeah, that was one of those beats. It was like I had for a minute and I couldn't figure it out, and then like that experience happened to me, and it just immediately made sense.
When you know the album was done?
When it was mastered. Next question.
All right, rapid fire questions. Ready? 3 artists in New York City that need love. Go.
Oh God. All right, I'm gonna definitely say, I don't want to say just rap, but I'm gonna say the Brody, Life of Tom, of course. I'm gonna say the homies, Thorns in the Mouth of God, and I'm gonna say Zoe Tan, Smay Nazar, Zayn, Jackie Pearl,
That's more than 3.
Alexander Knight.
We can't count no more. That's cool. Quick, biggest pet peeve about being an artist in 2026?
Content.
Favorite borough to play in?
Brooklyn, Manhattan. Both.
Dream artist to play with?
Tyler the Creator, King Cruel.
When are we getting a Rosetta video?
ASAP. Rocky.
Favorite night-related piece of media?
Berserk.
Ooh. Most chaotic show you played?
God. The Rooftop. We did a show on the rooftop in Midtown, and I performed trap and we almost broke the roof. It's pretty chaotic.
Games about night?
Also the Vast Nights event here.
Oh, the Vast Nights
Nights event here.
Oh, the one where I was shuffling like toilet water.
Yeah. And then we had to perform like 2 minutes after that. Yeah. That was pretty chaotic.
Games about nights or movies about nights?
Oh God. Games about nights are awesome. Like Elden Ring is crazy. Like video games about nights are amazing. But movies about nights, like, man, I can't even lie. Like, I love like the King Arthur movie from like 2017. I also love like medieval stuff that isn't even directly about nights. Like I love Dracula Untold. That was a huge reference for the album.
It's
Crazy reference.
I did not see that one.
That definitely inspires stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Last song that made you cry?
Dude, I don't know. Probably something by King Cruel or Frank Ocean. I don't cry listening to music.
Should we build a statue of Jalen Brunson?
Yes. Yes, it should be in front of MSG, and there should be one in every borough actually.
I agree.
Yeah.
Song that fans love but you hate?
Like any song ever?
From you?
Oh, one of my songs that fans love that I hate.
Yeah.
Lost in Time.
Oof. Best YouTube to MP3 converter?
Whichever one first pops up that doesn't give you ad blockers, ad issues. Whatever works, it doesn't crash your computer.
Best website to find samples?
Ooh, Samplet. Yeah, samplet.io for sure.
Worst month to be in NYC?
Any cold month or the hottest month. Really just year-round stuff out here.
Overhyped New York City nighttime activity?
Clubbing.
How much is too much to spend on a pair of pants?
No comment.
The Last Night album was unofficially sponsored by what beverage?
Yerba mate. Yerba mate for sure. Yeah. And mud water. Yo, yerba mate and mud water. Hit me up, please.
Need that sponsorship.
Please. Love y'all.
Last question. Plans for 2026 and beyond?
Tour, more music, more videos, more content, more fans, more audiences, and great connections and collaborations. And serve something greater.
Alexander Knight with 7. I've been Jake. Where can people find you?
All streaming platforms. Find me at Alexander Knight, and on social media platforms at the Alexander Knight.
Try to get to me with the verdict and begging that I plead for those that serve justice to judges who want to see me bleed. Wicked times, can't get on my mind. I could barely sleep. Tough luck, trying to settle up with the dreams I see.